Welcome back from the Universal Design Project. I am so thankful to have had the opportunity to sit down with Charlie Downs and hear his perspective on life. Charlie is someone that experienced much of his life with a disability, before accessibility laws as well as the disability movement were even discussed. Stories like his remind us how far we have come in terms of equal opportunity and treatment. As always, there's room for improvement, and Charlie is able to provide us with some great examples of how our communities can be better designed for individuals of all ages and abilities. I'm excited to share his story with you. Meet Charlie.
I'm Charles F. Downs. Many people call me Charlie, so that's nice. And believe it or not, last August I was 80 years old. I live here in Waynesboro, and I have been here since 1968, but I started in Long Island in New York State. And my dad was a potato farmer.
Ooh.
And when I was 6, I came down with polio, which was 1944, and spent 2.5 years in a Catholic Children's Hospital on Long Island. And after 2.5 years, the doctor told my folks that, well, he's going to be an institutional case. He's going to be a vegetable.
Wow.
And my mom was a pretty stubborn lady.
Fortunately, right?
Fortunately, yes. And so she said, well, if he's going to be a vegetable case, he's going to be at home with his family. So they took me out against medical advice.
Wow.
I had just been fitted with long leg braces and crutches, but because my folks took me out against their advice, they would not show me how to walk. So,
wow.
6 months after I got home, I got home at Christmas time, 1946, I guess it was. And about 6 months later, I went to a rehabilitation center at Haverstraw, which is outside of West Point, New York, for 6 weeks to learn how to fall and to learn how to dress and how to walk and that sort of thing.
What kind of therapy did you have there? Was it physical therapy, occupational?
No, it was more like independent living
Okay.
sort of things, as far as walking and being able to fall without hurting yourself. And they would time me for how long it would take me to get dressed, because I had braces from my neck down to my feet at the time. And so every time they would time me, it was like, you got to do better the next time. So I think about that every single morning now. I think, as long as you get started, you can finish the job.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you put things off a whole lot, but you got to get started first. So anyway, so that got me started. But it was a day and time when schools were not accessible, so my dad would have to pick me up, carry me into school, and sat in the big wooden chair in the back of the classroom. And I didn't get outside at all because I couldn't do the steps, of course. Then he would come pick me up in the after school. I had my little urinal bottle there at the classroom there, so I was there all day long.
Yeah.
But gradually, with my family was a big one to support me, and my mother never wanted me to hear me say can't do this, you can't do that. They'd always say, "Can't is buried behind the barn door." We lived on a farm, so that was appropriate.
Very appropriate.
To bury it
Yeah.
back there. So, let's see. I'm fortunate that I was the recipient of rehabilitation services through the state, which helped me through my college financially. And I've always had an interest in people and in service. And so after college, in Washington College in Chestertown, Maryland, I went to graduate school in Richmond and got my master's in rehabilitation counseling.
Very.
First job, was with Social Security. I did disability determinations for about 3.5 years, but I was not satisfied with the mere paperwork, which is adjudication for disability benefits. And I had an opening during the college degree. I had an affiliation at Woodrow Wilson Rehab Center because it was like an internship affiliation. But there wasn't an opening in rehab services in the state at the time, so that's when I took the job with Social Security. There was an opening for a counseling position at Warm Springs, Georgia. It opened in 1964, and I was one of the first counselors to go to Warm Springs, which is adjacent to what they used to call the Warm Springs Foundation, where FDR went to the pool.
Okay.
We have swum in the same pool that FDR was during that time.
Claim to fame there.
Claim to fame there. Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
And it actually the waters are warm. It's Warm Springs, the name. And my wife was a school teacher. After I started my work, was married in 1961. My wife was a librarian and a school teacher. And we went to Georgia, and it was during the time of segregation, and integration had just been introduced into the area, and she was the first white teacher to go into a black system.
Wow.
In the county.
Wow. In Georgia.
In Georgia, yeah.
Wow.
But the culture and values in Georgia were a little bit different back in the 60s than what they are today. And so and she was an old Virginia gal. So we had a chance to come back to Virginia, and I came back to Woodrow for an interview. And my boss was the same one that I had when I did my affiliation.
Okay.
The one who interviewed me. So he was a World War II veteran. He had an artificial arm and artificial leg, and he had smoked a pipe. And his name is Mike Gaynor. Mike Gaynor sat back on his chair with his pipe, and my only interview question was, "When can you start, Charlie?"
That's pretty cool.
That is. I'm proud of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I worked there and retired in 1991, believe it or not, which is a long time ago now. So that's my career.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing.
Okay.
How did you and your wife end up meeting?
It was a blind date.
Okay.
When I was in graduate school, one of the college friends, his wife was a school teacher, and as I said, my wife was a school teacher. And he said, one of the professors, audiology professor, asked if we wouldn't come for a Christmas party. So I got a blind date, and that happened to be Leona. Yeah. Unfortunately, she died at age 51 from ovarian cancer after 27 years of marriage. So that was a really sad time for us. That was in 1988. And so I was single for a while and had to do for myself. You talk about independence, that's the time to trust and test your independence.
Absolutely.
And but I remarried a local person here in Waynesboro. She had also had a marriage with her husband, died from cancer. So we linked up in 1995. So the thing that happened at that point was, as I said, I had polio at age 6, and primarily used crutches and braces for the most part. I would use a wheelchair occasionally, but not that much. But in my heart, I always knew that at some point I would probably be using a wheelchair. When I was a kid, I thought, well, I don't need this upper bracing, so I would throw it away, and think, oh, I'm getting better, And then the pelvic band came off of the braces, And so as a result of that, I've got a double scoliosis, but that was,
Yeah.
that's past.
That is past.
That's past at this point.
Yeah.
But after Leona died and I remarried with Mary Alice, we built an accessible home. Because, as I said, I knew my future would be a wheelchair at some point. So that's what I like about universal design, is that if somebody can start from the very beginning and think about that, especially in the building process, you've got to look ahead. You've got to look to the future. And in my counseling, that's one of the things that I kind of stressed. You kind of look at your options and look at future goals. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's important because it's a lot more expensive remodeling after.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
modeling those changes.
Yeah, I don't know what the statistics now show, but it was a very minor change as far as, but it's worth it in the long run if you're looking ahead to the future. It's a different world now with ADA. That has made a great change as far as people with disabilities being to access and be included in the life of the community, in their home life as well. One thing I guess I would want to let people understand is that sometimes there are detours in life, and although I believe in making things as fully accessible as possible, not every disability is going to have the same amount of limitations as someone else, and so you have to learn to adjust it yourself. For example, if we do a lot of traveling. I've been very fortunate to do some travel after my retirement, and if there's a trail or a mountain trail, for example, that is part of a tour of some sort, I don't mind, and I understand that I can't do it. And it doesn't bother me. And people think, oh, well, I wish you can. It doesn't bother me. And I think people have to understand that sometimes it just doesn't work for you. And accept it, and go on. Find something else of interest to do. We do, as I said, some traveling, and many times if we get off a ship, some of the outside experiences are not accessible.
Right.
So I'll find something else to do. We went to Italy, and my wife wanted to do Pompeii, so I took a bus tour of the area. She did all the climbing up to the ruins as such, and it didn't bother me. It didn't bother me because I'm always looking for some sort of way around things that would still please me.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's important.
So,
Absolutely. So I know you said that your house recently that you built, you made changes initially up front. So what were some of those changes that you made?
Okay. After I retired from Woodrow, ADA came along, and I did some volunteer work for the city of Waynesboro. And the very first things when ADA was initiated was to do an assessment, evaluation of buildings and programs and services. And so the city manager, I knew I was interested in doing some volunteer work, so I started doing some ADA things. So that was in September, and he said, after that, I was on the job about 3 or 4 months as a volunteer, and he said, you're working too hard. You want to be put on the payroll. So, hey.
Sure.
So I started, and I was on a payroll, so I was a part-time ADA person.
Okay.
For the city. And some of the things, what I'm leading up to is that some of the things that I knew from that experience, from the ADA experience, helped me plan for my home. For example, in the home we have a cutout so that I can pull my chair under a cabinet area, so I can wash dishes. I enjoy fixing food from time to time. We have a counter that has a lower shelf. We have extra wide doors. We have a wide hallway. The light switches are lower. We have a minimum number of rugs because rugs are kind of a hassle from time to time. We do have some hard flooring, which is very good for wheelchair purposes. I made a mistake of putting white carpet in our bedroom to begin with, and can you imagine what a wheelchair does to white carpeting? So we now have wood floors. Okay. So you learn. I would start off that way next time, but anyway, so you learn.
It's a learning lesson.
It's a learning lesson.
That was an easy change, right?
Yes.
It could be more difficult.
Oh, and the nice part about it is I have a garage that is on level with the kitchen, and I can pull into the garage and go right into the kitchen, with no steps at all.
Okay. Do you have steps in the home?
We have a basement, but I have a stair glide
at
the house. and the front, everything was level for the initial instruction, but the front step, the cement has sunk, and so now there's a little step like this. But I never use a front door anyway.
You can just use the garage.
I still use the garage, but
Okay.
there is a step now to the front door,
Okay.
which disappoints me. But since I don't use it, I'm just not going to worry about that.
It's not a big deal.
Not a
Yeah.
big deal.
Is
So-
your main bedroom and bathroom on that first
Oh,
floor?
on the first floor.
With the kitchen?
Mhm.
Okay.
Large, let's just say a large room and large wide doors,
Mm-hmm.
and the light switches, as I said, everything is down lower. So
Yeah, that's
those are
wonderful.
some main things. And I have a shower chair. I used to be able to use a tub, but as I've gotten older, it's become more difficult to get in and out of a tub.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a shower that has a shower bench in it.
Okay. Is it a walk-in shower, or does it have a
It could be a
lid?
walk-in shower.
Okay.
It does have a lip, but since I just transferred from the wheelchair, the lip doesn't make any difference to me at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But it does have a lip in it.
Okay.
Originally, I had it designed so I had a fold-down seat. But as I said, I had stomach surgery about 2005. I had some a bleeding also due to some medications, and spent 3.5 months on my back with 3 surgeries. And after that, I tried to get back on my feet again with crutches and braces, and I just lost too much strength. I was in physical therapy. I went back to Woodrow for some therapy, but I knew because of my age and the advancing of polio limitations that I gave it a good try.
Absolutely.
So I've been in a wheelchair full time since about 2005,
Okay.
which is fine.
Mhm.
My life, I don't think I've missed much in my life at all, really. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty adventuresome. So
Good. I like
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Was that a hard transition though, making to a wheelchair?
No.
Okay.
I can't think of anything that I have missed along the way. As I said, I always find an alternative that I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say that I've missed anything. I've enjoyed a lot of travel, and some of the travel things that I did back on my feet I couldn't do today.
Mm-hmm.
So now when I travel, I have to make sure that there's an accessible bus,
Mm-hmm.
there's an accessible hotel, which has a shower and the commode and that sort of thing. You sometimes have to hunt around to find the right situation.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. Is that ever difficult to plan? Just because
Well,
some things
if you
will be-
find a motel or hotel that you know in your past experience has been successful, you're more inclined to ask for that in the future.
Right.
Yeah, I'll have to give, for example, when we travel, many times I will ask for a Best Western
Okay.
because I do know it's kind of a modest price range,
Mm-hmm.
and it's nice accommodations, so the amenities are good as well. But I do know that their accessible bedrooms and bath are good for me, so I'm inclined to ask for that when I make a reservation.
Okay.
I have traveled on 5 continents in my wheelchair.
Wow. What were those continents?
Including 2 South African safaris.
Really?
Mhm.
And everything was okay?
Yeah.
No problems with
Well,
those trips?
the tour guide he has his own reserve in outside of Cape Town, and he was a big, strong ex-boxer. So again, I was in a wheelchair at the time, and to get into his Jeep, whatever, he just picked me up and put me over.
Okay.
But he was so accommodating. He has sort of like cabins on his reserve. He has 32 square acres of property
Wow.
with wild animals, everything except elephants there.
Where was it in Africa? South Africa, you said?
South Africa. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and so he would just pick me up and put me into the Jeep, which
Okay.
I understood, and I would make sure that it wouldn't hurt somebody's physically,
Right.
if I get it in steps, whatever, and people want to know what they can do about helping me, I want to make sure that they're comfortable with the situation,
Absolutely.
and it's not a strain on them.
Mhm.
If it's a strain on them, I say don't even try it. So
Did you know ahead of time that was going to have to happen?
Yeah.
That's how the transfers
yeah, I
were
had met
gonna
him, and
occur?
that's one thing that I believe. If you're going to get outside and you're not sure about the accessibility, you need to ask questions up front.
Right.
Don't take people by surprise. Don't show up in a wheelchair and expect everything to be accessible for you.
That's good advice.
Plan ahead and let people know what your needs are, and then work around those. If those needs, if their requirements don't meet your need, look someplace else. So, but as I tell people, don't show up and expect them to accommodate you. You know, it's up to you to let them know what your needs are.
Right.
And then you decide if that's something that you want to pursue. So.
And sometimes those accommodations need to be made far in advance.
Exactly.
I mean, depending on what they are.
Exactly.
It can be kind of complex.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's important to consider.
Yeah.
It's good advice.
You know, and if you're putting out money for a tour or a cruise or something like that, you need to know what expected of you once you get there. You know, and what they have to offer.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So don't be afraid and speak up and let people know about it. So.
Yeah. And getting back to your home real quick.
Sure.
Now, I know a change that you made after the fact was the carpet to the hardwood floor.
Yeah.
Are there any other changes that you would make now that you can think of to make it easier for you?
No.
No?
It's been very, very comfortable. We
Okay.
feel very blessed to be able to do that. We took both our, my wife Mary Alice had a home and I had a home, and we just combined a lot of our furniture. So there's just two of us there at this point. So, but it's a fairly large house for the two of us. But it's very comfortable and very safe, and feel very secure.
It sounds like you knew exactly what to put in ahead of time, so you probably had a lot of involvement in that process, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you work with a builder that was well known for kind of accessible
A
design?
builder who was into accessibility and is a personal friend, and so that made it nice as well.
Okay. Was that process pretty easy for you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
For me, you know, I had the advantage of knowing the information, you know. That's another thing for people, you know, with this day of you can go to the internet and get lots of information. You know, you can go to the ADA website and find out what are the specifications for a width of a door or the height of a chair or whatever it might be. So, you know, there's a lot of information, knowledge out there for people. Just take time to research it. And I don't think people understand that until they actually get into that situation.
Yeah.
During my volunteer work, I spent a lot of time with the our local Waynesboro Senior Center. And at that point, people need to realize, people with disabilities I think need to realize that age brings on its own limitations. And especially someone with a disability, face up to it that you're also going to be facing with some limitations far greater than what you have now. Because as with age, you lose some of your independence. So plan ahead, you know, plan ahead as much as possible.
Yeah.
And be resourceful.
And that's what we've noticed people don't always do, is plan ahead.
Yeah.
They don't really want to think about something happening in the future.
Yeah.
But
those years roll by pretty fast.
Yeah.
You know? And, you know, do it while you can. Don't wait until it's a real tragedy for something to have to change your lifestyle. In working with seniors now, many of them, you know, did not plan for the future, and they're living in tri-levels and can't get from one floor to the next floor and don't know what to do. And it can be pretty tragic. It really can. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, your house before the one that you just built, not just built, but but recently, I guess, did that, you know, have any challenges? Were there barriers to that home?
You know, I never used a wheelchair in that house.
Okay.
I was on my feet and my braces and crutches during that time, and I didn't realize until recently I never used a wheelchair.
Okay.
You know, and it was I had a basement to it, and you know, my wife mowed the lawn, and you know, and I did things, but I was on my feet all the time. I would crawl, you know, from the bedroom to the bathroom, and which was the way I got around, of course, if I was going to get into a tub or a shower.
Okay.
And those are just, ways that you compensate. So.
Yeah. I remember you saying that your dad actually used to carry you into school. So did that happen up until high school that he would do that?
No, after I got into some rehabilitation and gradually learned to get on my feet and use my crutches and braces, I would get on the school bus. But now this sounds like I'm from the 1800s, but my elementary school was actually a 4-room schoolhouse.
Okay.
We had 2 grades in each room.
Oh wow.
But it did have an upstairs, and my the principal for that little school was so, I think of him, Mr. Card, so often. He wanted me to be included, and so when they would have an assembly program, my dad would have to come in and take me upstairs.
Okay.
And they wanted me to get involved with the sports, so I would, keep score during a ball game of some sort. Or if there was a Halloween costume, they made me sit in a corner as a gypsy. I didn't have to move around. I could just tell fortunes just sitting in a corner. So you adapt yourself to whatever the situation calls for. So, but he was always encouraging to get me included. I've never felt excluded in anything. I've never had that experience. And I know many people do, and I'm sorry for them, but I have never felt excluded. People have always been very kind, very helpful. When people say, I never know whether to offer any help to you because you guys want to be so independent, and my answer is it never hurts to ask.
Exactly.
Yes.
But
sometimes I may enjoy a push. I said, sure, I'll take a free ride. And other times I'll say, well, I got it this time. Thanks for asking, though. I always thank them for offering because, I represent not just me, but other people in similar situations.
True.
And what they experience with me, I hope will help them understand their situation when they see somebody who is likewise. So.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. I like that.
You never know. You never know.
So how has this injury impacted your driving over the years and getting to and from places?
Well, I didn't drive until I got into graduate school.
Okay.
So, which is a little older than most people at this point. In fact, in those years, I didn't even consider driving. It wasn't, as a teenager, I never even thought, well, I can't drive.
Okay.
I don't know why it never occurred to me. In this day and time, I would think about it. But at that point, back in the 50s, I didn't think about it. So about 1960 is when I first, and I was driving a friend's car who she had hand controls on her car.
Okay.
We were both doing some affiliations at Woodrow at the time. And so she had a little car and she would let me drive to get some experience. And then I took my driver's test at Woodrow.
Okay.
And lined up and got my driver's test. I have currently have a van that you click a button and the door opens and the ramp juts out. And it's a kneeling van, by the way. You've seen these kneeling buses,
Yes.
where they drop down so that people don't have the high step. Well, this is a kneeling van.
Okay.
So it doesn't make the ramp quite as steep. So I get in and then I transfer to the driver's seat.
Okay.
And then I have hand controls, of course, in the driver's. And but I do a lot of traveling, many times by myself. And I enjoyed driving. So the van was modified originally for a veteran. She had it for 2 years, and I understand some of the veterans are eligible to get new vans every 2 years or something like that. So it only had 4,000 miles on it at the time. So after 2 years, I thought that was a pretty good job good deal for that. So.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. So
Good.
my driving is adapted so that anyone else can get behind the wheel, which is nice.
So you or your wife could drive.
Can drive.
Right.
And if I have to park someplace and the valet picks it up, I just tell them, don't fool with the hand controls because they are hard to get used to. In fact, there's a little sticker now on the windshield says, you know, or you have to be trained in order to use the controls or something to that effect.
So what kind of controls?
They're just merely
Controls
hand
are there?
controls.
Hand that
you
you
push
push
down
in
for the brake and push up for the accelerator.
Okay.
The kids are fascinated by it.
Yeah.
You know, they think, how's that guy drive, you know? So
Yeah.
that's another thing. Kids are probably more apt to ask you about your disability than others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had one experience when we were living in Richmond. We had gotten a little house, and I was doing some backyard work, and because I enjoy flowers and yard work and that sort of thing, gardening. And so I was doing some gardening back there, and then one of the little neighbor guys, he's about 6 or 7, came by, and we started chatting. He's something why I know why I was crawling around, that sort of thing. So I went and I told him my story. Well, I learned I told him too much, because he said at the point, he said, "You're so sick, you ought to be in bed." So that taught me, you know, you don't need to explain more than what's really necessary.
That's true.
You know, people only want to know so much. So that was a learning lesson for me.
Right.
It was a cute little story, but that was a learning lesson for me.
Mm-hmm.
So if a kid's ask me, and I say, well, I got hurt, you know, and tell them, you know, sometimes you get shots, vaccinations, and that's why, because you know, polio is something that people don't hear about anymore, thank goodness.
Mm-mm.
You don't hear about it.
Not very often, yeah. You occasionally hear about post-polio syndrome.
Post-polio syndromes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's when you're kind of advanced your aging process more than anything else. And I knew that was going to happen, you know, but I don't really think of, I think my progression of being on my feet to getting in a wheelchair is just natural for the disease as such, and I don't think it has really made much of a functional impairment for me at that point. Because I've got a pretty independent spirit about myself. So.
Yeah, and it sounds like you kind of anticipated.
I did, yeah.
That future kind of.
Yeah. So I have a friend who's now deceased, but she said, "I'm going to go while I can, because when I can, I don't want to say I missed anything." So.
Very good way to look at it. Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely. So, did your injury at all affect leisure activities and how you're able to participate in them, or not so much?
Really.
It sounds like you still traveled a lot.
Yeah.
And
I'm not a real strong sports enthusiast, so I never really got into the sports part of it, you know. So I don't know of anything that I really missed along the way.
And you were still able to garden. You said you like gardening.
Yes.
And you were still able to do all that.
I don't do that now because I don't, you know, I think of what I did 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. You know, I would love to go to the beach. I would get up 4:30 when after my first wife died. I would get up 4:30 in the morning so that I could see the sunrise at Virginia Beach, on the beach. And then I would crawl into the ocean, you know, and crawl back and get in my wheelchair by myself and do all sorts of things. I couldn't do that today.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So those are things that come on with age, I think, more than anything else.
So you would actually get in the water and
everything?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I love the water. I don't do it now. It's just too much of a hassle to, you know, so. But, no, as I say, do it while you can and while you can enjoy it, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what is one thing in your community that you would want to change to make it easier for you to participate in something that you may enjoy?
One of my peeves, I guess it is the fact of people don't observe handicap parking. If I could change that, people think I'm only going to be there for a minute, or they're using grandma's card. The abuse factor is so rampant. Yeah. When I was doing some ADA work for the city and we had a comparable disability services board, I knew the lady who was we called her the lady meter reader. And she would, we made up a little placard that said, if somebody didn't have the right placard or the license in symbol, this is just for your information, you are parked in a spot that has been reserved, you know. We did it as a courteous thing, as the notice of it. But I see so much abuse of people who will park at using handicap parking and then go in and do 2 miles on the track or 2 miles in the shopping center or something like that. And I don't know what it takes to curb that, but if we could just be a little bit more respectful, I think, of handicap parking spaces. People will actually start parking into the access aisle. And I've noticed at the parking lot now at University of Virginia Hospital, they have put in a post at the end of that hatched off area, so that people don't crowd in there. So
right, and that space, that additional space is needed. I mean, like you have the ramp that comes out. I mean,
I've had to wait for people to come get in the vehicle so that I could, because it crowded the space, I couldn't get my ramp out.
Right.
I've had to wait for people to come.
Yeah, and that's just, that
And you never know.
That's not what it's designed for.
No, and you never know if it's going to be 2 minutes or 2 hours.
Yeah.
You know.
Have you had any direct conversations with people who have used it?
Yes.
That way? Yeah.
And I've said, legally, you could be fined $500.
Should be more.
Well, if it's not enforced, I think law enforcement could easily make up their budget by patrolling handicap parking.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm surprised that it's not more controlled. Or
your picture is not on a placard. Of course, it's not going to be on license.
True.
It's not on a placard because of confidentiality and all that sort of thing. So they do have a number and let's see the date of expiration on it. But somehow if they could do more of a personal identification without getting into the laws of confidentiality and all that sort of thing. But
you think they could scan it?
Something.
Yeah.
Something. I'm not sure what the answer is. I mulled it over for years, trying to think of something. I also have talked to a lot of people who want handicap license because it's convenient, and they will talk their doctor into it. And I've had people who have changed doctors because their original doctor will not give it to them. I haven't.
Oh, wow.
Know people who will change doctors in order to get a handicap sticker.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's good to know. I mean, it's good to put it out there, and hopefully changes.
At some point, with technology, maybe there's something.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know. I don't know what it will take. Just to be a little bit more respectful. That's what I would ask for. That's all. Yeah.
It's good advice.
Yeah. And doors, I think, could be another issue for people to be paying more attention to. Doors can be pretty heavy, and I realize sometimes there's in the fire lane or a fire door which has to be heavy. But the way a door swings and the weight of the door sometimes could be a whole lot easier for people in a wheelchair to use.
Yeah.
But sometimes the doors are there's a set of double doors, and one will be this way, so you're here and you can't move ahead of time. So you need almost 2 other people to hold this door and that door in order to get through.
Right. Yeah, because they're blocking each other.
They're blocking each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you experienced that in businesses?
Sometimes.
That you've gone to? Okay. Yeah.
If you're unsure about a situation, don't be afraid to ask. Be upfront again to ask, and be good-natured about it when you do a response. I'm not a real true radical in the sense of being aggressive enough to go out and march for whatever purpose. I would, in myself, try a different approach to make a change in this situation. But if you're not comfortable with something and you don't know, then obviously just go ahead and ask. If you have a question about it, I don't mind. I'm past that age of trying to feel insecure or embarrassed or anything like that, so it doesn't bother me. So
okay.
I think we can have a better relationship if we just are open with one another.
Okay. What advice do you have for businesses or community organizations for making things more welcoming for you? And I know we kind of discussed that with the accessible parking and the doors. Is there anything else that you can think of?
When you make arrangements for wheelchair access, see if you can do an arrangement so that you're not blocking somebody else's view, for example. I know they take out, in churches, we've taken out some pews,
Okay.
or some cutouts, you know. And in some of the theaters, they have made accommodations for wheelchair sections.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, some of these wheelchairs in parishes have gotten so big. As I say, one situation does not fit everybody.
Right.
But be considerate as far as the people around you, and don't disturb their line of sight or something like that when you're making some accommodations. It's nice to make accommodations, but also think of the situations around you as well, and the people. Give them some consideration as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
good. Has the injury impacted your relationships throughout your life in any way?
no, you know,
Like you said,
that's just me. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, everybody has their own life, and this is mine. So when I had a heart attack when I was 47.
Wow.
And at that point, you know, you didn't go back to work for 3 months. So I always enjoy being in the sunshine. So I would lay out in the backyard. It was happening in June, so I was laid off. I mean, I was out of work for 3 months from Woodrow for recovering from a heart attack. So I sat on a lounge chair in the backyard in the sunshine, and I was scripting a little children's book.
Okay.
And the title of it is I did some, you know, chapters, whatever. But the title, and I believe in it, there's no one else like me. So, you know, everybody's their individual, and this is my life, and so that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no regrets. I mean, I have some sad times, of course, like anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
The loss of my wife and the situations, and but I really had a nice, good life.
Mm-hmm.
Good life.
Now, did you ever finish the children's book?
No.
No? I love it.
Every couple of years, I will find
Think
a
about
script
it.
about it. You know, I'm thinking, I might have done something with it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but I was in the book. I was trying to relive some childhood experiences that other children with a disability might identify.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
in the fact that maybe you couldn't get out on the tractor and help your dad on the farm, but you know, you could help do some things inside. You know, and
Help in another way.
yeah, shell peas, and you know, make some dishes and that sort of thing, or go outside and do some things as well. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Neat.
there's always something that you can find to do.
Mm-hmm. What is it that you wish more people knew about you?
Oh, gee, Nicole.
That's a hard question.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because I'm
An open book, right?
kind of an open book at this point. You know, I enjoy volunteer work, and everybody knows that. I do a lot of plan trips for seniors and programs, educational programs for various church groups. Active in my own church, First Baptist Waynesboro. So, like I said, I'm pretty much of an open book.
Yeah.
People know me that I'm adventuresome.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy traveling, that sort of thing. So I don't know what there is about me that people don't know already. I don't have any hidden secrets to share at this point.
That's a good thing, right?
Ah!
And if you did, you wouldn't tell them on camera, right?
That's right. Why should I tell the camera there?
Oh, that's funny. No, that's perfect.
Okay.
Thanks, Charlie, for providing us with a wealth of information to make businesses, community spaces, and homes more accessible. Something Charlie noted after the interview was the advantage of a product that most of us use every day, and that is our cell phones. He mentioned that he always carries his cell phone around with him as a lifeline, because you can never truly predict what may happen. He suggests that everyone, especially individuals who are aging and have a disability, carry a cell phone on them in case of an emergency. Along with this great piece of advice, Charlie provided wonderful tips and recommendations throughout his entire video. I hope you enjoyed his interview as much as I have. Thanks again for listening.